last time on how to win the loser's game.
But what I know is the average investor who does invest in an active fund has to expect to lose relative to a passive strategy.
For any investor to invest, you have to understand why the person you're giving your money to is in the half that's going to make money, not the half that's going to lose money.
The sillier the market's behaviour, the greater the opportunity for the business-like investor. Follow Graham and you'll profit from folly rather than participate in it. And that brings us to another important aspect of successful investing. Whichever route you choose to go down, whether it's passive, active, or somewhere in between, your behaviour is absolutely critical, especially at times that emotions are running high.
One of the big difficulties is getting people to stay the course when results are disappointing. It should come as no surprise to people that markets go up and they go down. When they go down, there's a tendency to people go, gosh, are we on the edge of an abyss? Will things really get bad from here? And they, like in 2008, 2009, it was difficult to get people to stay the course. My heart goes out to these people that were invested in equities, lost half their money, then got out and missed the rebound. It may take quite a while for them ever to get back even again.
Everyone knows the idea is to buy low and sell high, but time and again we do the precise opposite. This chart shows how much money US investors have put into and taken out of equity funds since the late 1990s. The graph peaks in January 2000. In other words, investors were piling in just as the market reached the top. Then, even worse, they bailed out just as prices reached the bottom and were about to rise again. That kind of behaviour is sadly all too typical, and even the professionals are prone to it. The effect on the long-term value of our investments can be catastrophic. So how do we as investors curb that sort of self-destructive behaviour? Well, one way is to have an automated approach to investing. So you choose your strategy and the level of risk you're prepared to take, and then you leave your investments exactly as they are. Either once or at the most twice a year, you rebalance your portfolio to realign it with your tolerance of risk, but again, that can be done automatically.
There are lots of styles that work over the long term. That, value works, dividend investing works, momentum investing works if you get it right. All sorts of things work, but they only work if you stick with them. And one of the problems that active fund managers have is it's very, very difficult for them to stick with any kind of style because they get buffeted around by opinion, by different methods of valuation, by markets, by what people say to them in the pub, by what their colleagues are doing, etc. It's very hard for them to stick to a strategy. When I see fund managers, and I see a lot of fund managers, they pretty much all tell me the same thing. They have a strategy, they outline their strategy. It's very often quality or value or income based. They have back tested it, they show me their back testing, it looks great. They go away and you think, well, if they do that, that'll work out very well. But they never do it. Or if they do it, they do it for 6 months or 8 months and then they're distracted by something, the strategy changes and their performance suffers as a result. But what fundamental indices do, or indices that are based on any one particular factor, is they force consistency. You have to choose a style and then the computer makes you stick to that style. And that's why it works.
It also helps to have a financial advisor to keep you on track. But not just any advisor. Far too many advisors believe, wrongly, that their primary role is to pick the right funds and to persuade their clients to switch to a different fund when, inevitably, their original recommendation underperforms.
There are two great roles for an advisor. One is to help individuals understand themselves and what their real financial purposes are and what their anxieties would be in anticipation, so they can lay out a really sensible long-term investment program. That's one. And the second is to hold hands and encourage staying the long term, because the long term can be very, very positive if we only have the ability to stay with it through the thick and the thin, through the exciting positives, through the terrifying negatives that cause most of us to make mistakes.
Why in the name of peace do we pay any attention to the stock market? The stock market is a derivative. The stock market is the derivative of what? It is the derivative of the earning power and dividend yields on, in the case of this nation, of U.S. corporations. The dividend yield plus the earnings growth that follows is what creates the fundamental return on stocks. And the speculative return on stocks, compared to that investment return, is how much people are willing to pay for a dollar of earnings, and that carries the market up and down. And in the long run, in the last 100 years, the contribution of speculative return to total market return is zero, and the contribution of investment return happen to have 4.5% dividend yield, 4.5% earnings growth. That's the 9% you read about at the pass of the U.S. market. The stock market is a giant distraction to the business of investing.
Of course, it doesn't help that we're constantly hearing about the markets. There are specialist magazines. Almost every major newspaper has a money section. There are radio shows and, of course, entire television channels devoted to the latest on the markets and where the so-called experts think they're heading.
When it comes to investor returns, the media is definitely a bad influence on the retail investor. What the media does is encourage activity. It encourages people to buy and sell. Invariably, it's not just the unnecessary costs involved in a lot of buying and selling. It leads to people making bad timing decisions. For their own benefit, I think investors should block out as much noise as possible.
And that, in a nutshell, is the secret to winning the loser's game. First, choose a strategy that's based on evidence, preferably one designed to capture the returns of the whole market, and then tailor it to your attitude to risk. Secondly, stick to your chosen strategy through thick and thin. Yes, rebalance your portfolio, but most important of all, stay the course. But we haven't quite finished. In the 10th and final video in this series, we're going to be looking at the bigger picture. The investment industry isn't just failing individual investors, it's failing the economy and wider society as well. So what can be done about it?
We've got too many people employed in it, doing too much, trading too much, for very small amounts of gain for the population as a whole, but of course a very large transfer of finance into the hands of the people doing it.
There are way too many funds. There's way too much attempt to produce difference out of nothing.
The trade bodies, of which the IMA is one, are masters at doing just enough to keep the show on the road.
There is a system that has failed society, period.